Hello everyone and welcome to our very special discussion on gender inequality in chess. I'm Grandmaster Dina Belenkaya and today I am gonna be your host together with all these amazing guests. As you can see here, the topic of our discussion is: should there be separate events, titles, prizes for women and men in chess? And to start with, before I introduce our wonderful guests, let me introduce the organization that is organizing this very special discussion. It is ACP, the Association of Chess Professionals, which is a non-profit organization aiming to protect the rights of professional chess players, address their concerns, and promotes chess worldwide throughout their organization of high-level chess tournaments and maintaining a ranking system of the top professionals. I am honored to welcome my wonderful guests today, and this is going to be a very important game of mine as well. Grandmaster Susan Polgar, former world champion, third woman to reach a title of a grandmaster in history, world number one at the age of 15. Many more achievements. Susan, really appreciate you making it for us. Thank you so much for coming.
Pleasure joining.
Woman Grandmaster Dana Reizniece-Ozola, Managing Director of FIDE since 2021, former Minister of Economics and Minister of Finance of Latvia. Dana, once again, welcome and appreciate you taking your time to making for our conversation.
Hello to everyone. It's my honor.
International Master Elisabeth Paehtz, the strongest German female chess player of all time, former European champion, currently waiting for her Grandmaster title to be approved. Elisabeth, hello and welcome.
Nice to meet everybody. Hello.
And FIDE Master James Eade, CEO of Eade Foundation, which is a non-profit corporation to build communities through chess to those who otherwise have difficulty accessing the chess community. James, you are the only male, if I can use this word appropriately. Thank you so much. It is important for us to have you joining our discussion as well.
Thank you. It's an honor to be invited, and the fact that I was a male hadn't escaped my notice.
It was not an easy job, to be honest. It is true that sometimes chess players and professional chess players, male players, avoid this kind of conversations for this or that reason. I'm sure that you, my dear guests, will also have something to add on this topic later on. We have already had lots of discussions and conversations on women in chess in general as a topic. Dana, yourself, you were at one of my shows last year. This year is very special. It is a year of women chess in FIDE. So it is kind of interesting to take a look at the, let's say, deeper and more concrete subject of an exact and straightforward question. Should there be separate events, titles, prizes for women and men or not? I suggest to use our time to create some kind of debate. I would love to hear all of you, each of you, your thoughts, and I would absolutely enjoy if you would even argue, maybe if your opinions differ from each other. Let me suggest first the pros that exist. Let's say, trying to put it objectively. Pros for having this kind of separation in women and men chess. It creates a friendlier environment for women. There is a better support. There's more chances to win a prize. There is a possibility to become an elite player and have a good life with, let's say, 2500 rating or so. Contras. It may be limiting. Women may be satisfied with less. Women titles, rating, it's not pushing for full potential. There is no survival of the fittest. I suggest we start with former world champion Susan Polgar.
Yeah, obviously this is a very serious topic and one that I'm quite experienced with, not just as a player, which obviously most people know me as, but few people know that I have organized over 800 rated tournaments. between in the United States and FIDE. I've been obviously a coach that is somewhat known, and I've been a sponsor to the game. And I have my foundation, who specifically was formed exactly 20 years ago to help solve this problem. Back in those days, 20 years ago, when I was reached out by the US Chess Federation's leadership in those days, they were telling me the statistics that there has been only less than 1% of their membership 20 years ago that were female. Less than 1%. And they wanted to remedy this and ask for my help. And that's when my foundation was born. And over the last 20 years, I'm proud to say that through our partners and sponsors and donors, we have awarded over $6 million in scholarships and prizes to mostly young women, some boys as well, but mostly women, young girls. And so that's one part, obviously, the equation that I always talk about, that it's a numbers game. So we have to have more women participating in order to have a better chance to find an exceptional talent who would have a chance to be at the very top. And in addition, by the way, to the cons that you were listing earlier, there is another important element that especially younger girls and in their teenage years, but also women at any age, many of us have faced a lot of harassment of all kinds, whether it's just as a chess player that girls' brains aren't as big, not as smart, not as capable, all the way to sexual harassment or even threats. And that's a very serious issue for a lot of girls, a lot of women that deal in chess that are uncomfortable with. So we have two folds of directions here. One, for the majority of the girls, that we need to broaden the base to have a lot more girls participating in the game. And then, of course, there is that small percentage, just like with men, that will really want to be competitive and serious and make a career out of chess, or just like in any sport, right? How many people play soccer? How many kids, right? Or basketball or any activity. The majority of them don't even think of ever becoming a professional. But yet, they are the base. Out of a larger base, just statistically, the chances of having super talent is a lot bigger. I mean, look at China. When I was growing up, I remember vividly, when I was playing the World Junior, for example, for Open boys, I was the only girl. And I was playing a Chinese player. This is 1988. And I said, oh, how lucky my pairing got. I'm playing an unrated player. Literally, the Chinese rep did not have a rating because in those days, Asia was practically non-existent in chess. Not Vietnam, not India, except for Anand, of course. They didn't have any good players. And look at that. Later, when they gave them a chance, the numbers came how many youngest grandmasters there are from India, for example, or how all of a sudden the Chinese found their talents when they actually, the numbers game kicked in. So I think it's the same for women. If we would have a lot more women playing, we would see a lot more successful women like I have been, or my sisters, or some of the Yuhui Fan or other players. So that's, I think, part of it. So I think we need both. That's my short answer, that we need both. We need to broaden the base. And for that sake, I think the majority of the girls feel more comfortable in a single gender tournament, all girl tournament, while the ones who are really serious and really want to take chess seriously, become potentially the best, they, of course, just like I did, need to focus on the open tournaments where they can get the best competition and need to shoot for the moon to beat Magnus. That's the only way. So I think the two can very nicely coexist. My dream is, and has been for many years, that one day it should no longer exist, the women titles, the separate women tournaments. And I'm still hoping that I'll get to see it in my lifetime, maybe in another decade or two, when there will be enough women playing and therefore enough, let's say at least 20, 30 in the top 100 there would be women. Unfortunately, it's not the case yet today. So I think in the meantime, it's very beneficial to have also the single gender tournaments.
So the system that exists today, for now, is beneficial.
That's my opinion, yes.
But in the future, once we're ready, it would be great to, let's say, get rid of these barriers.
I think when there is no need for it, because there are plenty of successful women, let's say at least one or two in the top 10, and as I said, 20, 30, 40 in the top 100, obviously at that point there may no longer need for it. Because I think that also would mean that our base is a lot larger. In order to get 30, 40 top 100 players, I think we would have to also multiply the base accordingly.
Fair enough. Thank you so much. Let's continue with Dana.
Yes, I could only second the opinion of Susan. Two major factors: it is broadening the base, and the second one is creating the secure environment. My vision and my dream is actually that one day there would be a lady really sitting at the chessboard fighting for the world chess champions title. Whoever is sitting on the opposing side, I would love to have such a battle between a man and a woman for the crown of the world. But yes, I mean, I think that it was 70s when the women chess titles were introduced, and one of the main arguments was actually the one that was already mentioned. It was a means how to attract more women. And I hope this goal, this task of the women titles has not exhausted itself. Really, I read somewhere, I think it was very interesting that the statement that it is easier for a woman to become the US president than the world chess champion because of the numbers. Chess teaches us that the quantity is not always the quality, of course. But as Susan said, I mean, the more you have the bigger you have the base, the bigger the chance is that the superstar would be born there. And given that there are only 2% of the grandmasters, or in the international tournaments, it's plus minus 11% of ladies playing there, I think it's still important to have special tools, how to attract them, how to give them the chance to excel, how to measure their progress, and the titles are one of those means. Regarding the separate tournaments, separate events for women, that I guess as well is an important factor for creating the secure environment. I fully agree with that. And even more so, if we would avoid having such special formats, we would really exclude large share of the world. Because coming from the Western world, for us, it's difficult to imagine that there might be families who would consider that chess is not for the girls because girls should not be interacting with boys on the regular basis. It's not acceptable. Yes, so I think even opposite, we should try to find additional ways how to support, how to propose more options and more formats for the girls only, like we're now doing in Kakuma Camp, the last year's new program carried out by FIDE. It is a training of refugees. So we saw that there's actually a special need to create the girls only program where we teach the chess to them and also provide some life building skills, thus empowering them. Because I'm pretty sure that if we would have continued only, providing the general chess training, we would have the situation as it is in the common class, 95% boys and only a few girls are there. Yes. Because of these cultural issues. So these have to be considered. And we want to have more girls on board. So special means have to be provided.
Right. Thank you so much, Dana. Moving on, Elisabeth, you are one of the most active chess players among all of us. I'm sure you have a very personal approach towards it, as you have been competing extremely actively within the latest decades. What is your take on this situation?
I have to be honest that before this conversation today, I spoke to some of my active colleagues because I was a little bit puzzled on how to take this conversation in which direction. And most of my female colleagues actually stated that it would be good to totally separate men and women and to have only women's tournament because honestly speaking, I mean, there is a huge difference in men's and women's chess for now, which we can claim on the statistics as we have only 10% of women's players in the world. But even if you had, let's say, a 50% amount, still, according to some science, it seems like that men would still be superior, even so I don't want to get deep into this discussion because I know it's a very sensitive topic and everything. But I honestly would suggest it would be good to have more female tournaments totally separate from men, because that would be the main issue to secure living from women's players. And this is not because I believe that women are less smart than men in chess tournaments in general. I just believe in the numbers, in the results, and in the statistics right now. And my main concern is that all my colleagues, which are still active and still do a living from chess, and they told me so, that they would prefer to have more female tournaments in order to have chances to do a living from that.
What about titles and prizes?
I mean, like we have now like a lot of men's tournaments, like for example, we had the Gibraltar Open tournament where we had a huge women's prize, right? And like a lot of women came to this tournament. We had at least like 20 or 30% of women participating in this tournament, which was unique. But apart from the tournament in Gibraltar, I couldn't like, maybe there was the Isle of Man event as well, but let's skip those two events. In all the other events, there was never such an opportunity to participate in an open tournament where we could take a prize, which would be a normal, let's say, monthly income, because the majority of women's prizes would be like, let's say, 500 euro, maximum 1,000 euros per tournament, where we have to work or play for 2 weeks. So it's not like that such a tournament, if we participate in an open tournament, that this tournament would secure for us to continue like this. And this is a problem because we don't have like 10 Gibraltar open tournaments a year where the first prize is 10,000 pounds or 15,000 pounds. So, and this is the issue. And that's why actually I strongly believe if we want to support women's chess, for now at least, without like putting any kind of gender or discrimination or smartness or anything like this into it, it would be good to have more female tournaments to secure that everybody can survive.
And speaking of titles, let's say the separation between titles for open section and especially women titles, do you think this is motivating, rewarding as a concept?
Well, I mean, like, with being very frank, I mean, I don't know since when the women's Grandmaster title and the women's International Master title is existing. I don't know when it was introduced. But we all know that each title application is 300 euros to the federation. So it's like also, it's a financial plus without like, I mean, being very frank. But to have all these titles, of course, it's a motivation for women. I totally agree. But we don't have to forget that it's also a plus to the World Chess Federation. So, I mean, I'm not in the position to judge whether the plus of the financial part or the motivation part, which is higher from these two parts. But we can be honest in this way that it was invented not only to make it for women more motivational, but also to have a financial benefit.
You mean for FIDE?
Yes.
It's good that we have Dana here, and I'm sure she
would like to. I think one thing that we have to understand is if you think that it's a motivational element for FIDE, of course, it generates some income. But what is important to understand that every euro actually goes back to the chess world. It's not that it would be streamlined to some other industries. FIDE, whatever euro, whatever money they take from the sector, it gives back and actually attracts more funding from outside. And yes, regarding women prizes, just to comment as well, I mean, the prize differences are still really, really huge. But I think Elisabeth and probably other professional chess players could also appreciate the progress that has been done also over the last years. If a few years ago, the prize difference in the major chess tournaments organized by FIDE was 5 to 7 times big between the men formats and the women ones. Now it's approximately 3 times, 2 to 3 times, mainly because of the huge difference in the prizes of the World Chess Championship match, which is partly, of course, also explained because by the fact that that the interest of the publics, the interest of the sponsors really differ. Unfortunately, for now, it is still much higher for the men's format. It's interlinked, of course. The higher the ratings, the stronger the players, the bigger the support. But I think that the fact that new formats have been introduced besides match, besides the candidates, Rapid and Blitz and the World Cup, 2 new formats have been introduced, the Women Grand Prix and Women Grand Swiss. So trying to respond to this need that is clear and understandable that Elisabeth also raised, that for women it is vital to have more competitions where they can play, where they can earn their living and demonstrate their excellence in chess as well.
I mean, Dana, I totally agree with you, but the titles of Women's Grandmaster and Women's International Master was long time even before the new FIDE arose. And I mean, like with the new FIDE, the last 4 years were huge for us. It's the greatest 4 years of support ever. But before that, already everything existed. And I didn't have the opinion that all the financial benefits FIDE took at this time to invent new titles got back to the players. I totally agree with you. In the last 4 or 5 years, I think this was the best thing which we could dream about. At least my personal impression was that FIDE improved huge in the last 5 years. But when I look at 15 years ago, when I was still a player and still active in everything, I didn't have the impression that all the pluses FIDE took at this time got back to the players actually.
I think if we talk about the financial aspect that we are talking about, there are a few issues. First of all, I would like to applaud FIDE that they have significantly raised the prizes, for example, for the Women's World Championship. I think it's like $500,000 or euro at this point, which is remarkable compared to, I remember in the 1980s, when Chiburdanidze and Gaprindashvili were playing for 3,000 rubles. Can you imagine? World Championship final for 3,000 rubles. And then when I played my match, I think it was like 200,000 Swiss francs, which was by far the biggest up to that point. And then I think it went down again to like 60,000 to the winner for many, many years until very recently. So I definitely would like to recognize that the great job that FIDE has been doing in recent years as of getting closer in closing the gap between the open section and the women's. I'm hoping, as you said, the issue is finding the sponsors, but I think maybe if it involving maybe some marketing people, I think it's a matter of marketing, because look at tennis, for example. Women play 3 sets instead of 5 compared to men. Women obviously don't hit as hard as men do, right? If you want to compare the level of play objectively. So in other sports, the same thing exists. And yet the women tennis players make the same money as the men in prizes. So I think we could improve even further in that area. And I was just thinking as Elisabeth raised the issue of charging for the titles and so on. And if we recognize the fact that there are so many less women and we'd like to improve that, raise that, let's say 10% of female participation to closer to the 50%, we may consider lowering the fees for the female prize titles. So that's just maybe something that I thought of right now during the conversation that could encourage more women and not to be a roadblock on even when they get the accomplishment of the title that some cannot even afford it to apply for it. By the way, I never applied for my WGM title back in 1981 when I made the norms and the rating. So even as of today, I've never been WGM, just people don't even know that. I went straight to GM.
And why is it so? I think it's interesting to understand your motivation. Did you jump over it immediately, or you didn't value the women grandmaster title that high?
I think it was a combination of things that I thought, I'll be an IM very soon, which I was. And, that's for one. But it was also the financial consideration. I mean, back then, a few $100s or euros, it was a lot of money. And in Hungary, I mean,
your federation didn't pay it, because it's normal now that the federation.
A lot of money for the federation too. Back in the early 1980s, 1981, we're talking about an average salary in Hungary would be, I think, somewhere between $30 and $50 a month. So let's say if it's $300, that's a lot of money.
I'd love to use this opportunity to pass the microphone to James, who hasn't yet shown us his take on this subject. And James, you've established the foundation that helps the minorities. Has you got a chance to work with women chess players, girls as well, via all your work?
Yes, absolutely. The foundation is the tagline and the elevator pitch is chess without borders. Doesn't matter what country you're from. It doesn't matter what language you speak. If you play chess, you're part of the chess community. And I would extend that it doesn't matter what your gender is. It doesn't matter what your skin tone is. None of that matters. It's a chess player. If you play chess, do you want to get better? That's all that the foundation cares about. And so you could have green skin, you can live on Mars, and would still think you're worthy of our support if you wanted to get started, but lack the resources. That's what we're about. And I'd like to talk a little bit more about my frustrations in trying to promote women in chess. But before I get into that, I want to talk a little bit about the topic that you raised and the way you set it up is the pros and cons. And at first two speakers, I thought, well, there's going to be no debate. So I was really glad that Elisabeth muddied the waters a little bit and said, give us an opportunity to discuss some of the different approaches that we can take to addressing the very real need that there is a substantial and has been a substantially larger presence of males in tournaments, in chess clubs, than women. And if you're a female walking into a chess club, what you experience is people turn. And when I walk into a chess club, people don't turn. And if they interact with me, they want to know my rating. That's all they care about. And they don't care how I look. So there's a systematic and systemic discrimination about women getting involved in chess that we cannot ignore. So these are the things that we're talking about. This is what's oppressive to women getting involved in chess. And basically people say that it should be a metric. What I hear is it should be a metric-based system. If they're good enough, fine, but they're not good enough. So they have to have separate events. Well, that's backwards thinking, in my opinion, because they're not good enough because they can't get in the door in the first place. And if they get in the door, if we open the door and welcome them in, then we'll see how good they can get. But that's not what we do now. We make them uncomfortable when they walk in the door. And so they tend to not walk in the door. If they walk in the door, they don't stay and get the chance to get good. Now, this is changing. In my lifetime, I have seen this radical change. I started playing in 1972, and I'm from the United States, so there's no bonus points for guessing why I started. But there were no women, and I will say no is too strong because there were a couple here and there. But basically, all of us, there weren't very many scholastic tournaments at that time either. That has completely changed since when I started playing chess. But the presence of women now is so much greater than it was. this, and the attention paid to scholastic chess has allowed girls and boys to compete together and to develop this spirit of competition as equals in a way that was just not possible in my day when I was playing, when I was coming up. There was no possibility for women to ever experience that they could be just another chess player. It was always more complicated than that. And when I would go to a tournament, I would go to a tournament and be part of a tournament, and we would, play a game, and then we would go out, win or lose, go out to lunch or something like that. And so there was a social aspect to it. I could say when I started playing chess, I would usually make a new friend at tournament. But women weren't so naturally accepted into that. So the idea of having separate events for them where they can do that, they can play a game of chess, win or lose, go out to lunch, make a new friend, that's very important, because then they feel supported and then they feel encouraged. And some of these tournaments that we hold that are just for women, they're inspirational to others. They see someone that looks like them, that has gone through what they've gone through, and they've achieved some success. And so there's two books that I have read that or I'm currently reading that I think that touch on these subjects in very important ways. The most recent is Chess Queens by Jennifer Shahade, and it talks about all the women who passed who have overcome these hurdles. And there's a chapter on the Polgar sisters, I think it's a chapter, but in any case, women such as Susan Polgar that have cracked through the glass ceiling. Now, this is a celebration of them, and I encourage everyone, male, female alike, to read that book. And there's another one that probably people are less familiar with because it's not about chess. It's Peggy Orenstein as a Schoolgirls. And she talks about the transition that girls have when they get to a certain age. They start caring about what boys think. And even though if they're good at math, and she was talking about STEM, basically science, technology, education, and math. And these types of things, they could be very good up to a certain age. And then the boys started to act differently towards them if they were good at it. And they started to care that they were getting shunned. And teachers started treating them differently. Like a girl would raise her hand, a boy would raise their hand, and they would call on the boy. So she's talking about this in general, but all of those things apply in the chess world as well. So Schoolgirls by Peggy Orenstein is a good read. If you want to educate yourself a little bit about the struggles that women get involved in when they're trying to get into science, math, or chess. It's not just chess where you run into the systemic and systematic difficulties. And more about the federations. I was on the executive board of the US Chess Federation. I was a zone president in FIDE, and I could talk more about those because that's a very interesting conversation that Elisabeth raised. That FIDE, for females, a feminine FIDE, a separate organization, but you would kind of stutter a little bit. FIDE, female FIDE, and it might be one of the littlest complications in establishing that, but I had never thought of that. So it's an interesting observation and something that I will pay attention to in the future. But there are things that are being done now that were not even on the table when I started playing chess. And if you talked about it, they looked at you like you were crazy. And I can talk more later on, I've taken too much time now, about my difficulties struggling with the United States Chess Federation to get female recognition. And I think the last thing I'll say is about the titles. Again, these titles serve as inspirations. And they allow people to compete for titles that they may not have been able to, because of the systematic discrimination that they faced, been able to get an IM norm, but they can get a women's international master norm. And that is meaningful. And I would continue to hold separate events. I would continue to have these women-based titles until we leveled the playing field, if and when. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, James.
I'd like to add also the fact that when in 2002 I founded my foundation, and at that time the only one all-woman tournament in the United States was the women's championship, the national championship. And I have lobbied to get approved an all-girls championship. And there was a lot of opposition, but finally they accepted it. And now the event has been running almost 20 years. And I can see that how when we went back to check just 10 years later, the numbers from the under 1% membership, because of such women's event, and eventually there were a few others as well, it went up to almost 15%. Because the girls were saying, wow, I thought I'm the only girl who plays chess. And as you said, that when they have that, a pleasant feeling of seeing other girls from all around the country. It was an event that each of the 50 states could send one representative, and they make friendships. And then 20 years later, many of those girls are still in touch. It's a really, really important aspect, I think, on the social level that encourages the retention of girls. Because one thing is to get girls into the game, but as I think several of you mentioned already, the issue is them staying. And the problem is that a lot of the girls and women that open the door into a chess club or a chess tournament, they are uncomfortable with how they are treated, and they never come back. So I think the retention is just as important as getting them in the door in the first place.
Yes, Susan, and to continue on this, I would say even more that it's important to keep them not only in the professional chess, but in the chess world in general. And one thing that using this opportunity of this year being announced the year of women, the women in chess, I want to use this opportunity to show that the chess world, it's not only about being a professional chess player. You have so many more opportunities. You can be an arbiter, you can be a trainer, you can be a photographer, you can be an influencer like Dina herself is. There are so many other professions where women are still underrepresented. I mean, what's the difference between a woman or a man's arbiter? But in practice, you would see that the minor part of them are really ladies. So I want to popularize these professions. I want them, I mean, the girls, to recognize that there are these opportunities. And policy-wise, we are also pushing for the policies that would ensure bigger representation of women in all these professions. Our goal is to reach 25% in each of those. I mean, it seems to be funny, but I mean, still, for some of the areas, it's still, like reaching for the sky. Management as well. I mean, I'm one of the seldom ladies in the top management of FIDE, but you see the change, and the more women will be there, the more chances for the others as well. But because the others would also believe in such opportunities and take the chance.
I remember when I was the chairperson of the Women's Commission for 10 years in FIDE, and that was one of our big fights to accomplish this. And that's when we suggested it, and it got approved. And we're working towards the 25% arbiters and the other roles that we discussed. And another issue I'd like to mention, by the way, that a lot of people, especially men, don't understand the handicap that young girls face. And I faced, and many of the other young female chess players faced of my generation, and they still do today. That when a young teenage boy, let's say 12, 15 years old, goes to a tournament and wants to go with the coach, they don't have a problem sharing a room, right? On the other hand, most conservative parents or regular parents would not feel comfortable their 13, 15-year-old daughter to share the room with their male coach.
So we should establish more women's coaches then, right?
But that's the issue. There are so few women's coaches. That's the whole issue, especially at higher levels.
Yeah, you're totally right. Maybe we should also try to make it attractive to become a FIDE seniors women's coach, to even invent this kind of position, because you're absolutely right. It's a huge issue, actually.
Yes, we are actually trying to do. And also this year is used for special training sessions organized for women who have been working as the trainers or coaches, or the arbiters have left the area, and we want to get them back. So we organize special trainings for women, free, so that they come back. It was also interesting that, for example, for the Olympiad training pro session, we were looking for the trainers who would be taking on the teams, and there's only few women rallying up.
I want to ask something in this regard, because I spoke to Nastya Karlovic, and she told me, like, or I think Antonetta told me, like, that you need to be a FIDE trainer's coach in order to get in any of these positions. But I can tell you that we are some of us have great experience in coaching. I mean, also I have been coaching since the Corona crisis, for example. I'm not a seniors coach, and I'm seriously considering to do the FIDE trainers webinars in order to become it. But then I know that I have to pay every year to stay it. And I'm not sure I have like benefits of staying the FIDE seniors coach by paying every year, but don't get any job in this connection. So this is one issue actually, which seriously needs to be considered for some of us who are professional and maybe now trying to switch to become a coach. I mean, I wouldn't mind, but for now it doesn't look very attractive because, okay, we become seniors FIDE trainer when we take part in the webinars, but then we have to pay every year, and it's not clear we get any benefits in order to get a job by FIDE to coach some of these girls or some of these groups. So this is also some big question, actually, I would like to arise.
You raise a good issue, because I also have been struggling to see what the motivational element, besides the fact that you got the title, yes, there is, and if you have to pay a regular fee, you should see one. Yeah, so it's a chicken and egg principle at this point. I still see it as such, because I see that FIDE should be providing more opportunities, like this program with Olympiad teams training sessions. Yes, that you see that your title gives some privilege compared to the others, you would be more motivated. But for that, of course, such opportunities have to be created, and that's our task. Yes.
Ladies, gentlemen, I have more questions to you regarding our topic, precisely the one that we started with. As far as I can see, everybody among us agrees that for now, this separation is for good. And once we're ready, we would definitely consider removing those barriers. So let me try to provoke you a little bit for more debate here. So let's say we add more money in women chess. Will this threaten the situation, or it's also about, let's say, working with the mentality of the chess community in total? Whoever would like to speak up first.
I think both are needed. Both are absolutely necessary. I think having bigger prizes or more opportunities for other roles, as well as of coaching, as we discussed, will definitely motivate more women to try to become professionals or remain professionals. But I think changing the mentality of the male chess players, organizers, leaders is equally important. I really believe so. Because I think the mentality that, I'm sorry to say, but often basically look at the women chess players as objects and treat them accordingly. And chess-wise, they'll just laugh at them. And, if it would be a guy, they wouldn't make fun of them. If it's a woman, they say, oh, another girl, of course. It's the same level, right? If an 1800 rated, let's say, guy walks in, they would not make the same kind of fun of them than if it's an 1800 rated girl. But they do. So I think it's really important for changing this culture and this negative ambiance that the girls and women have to face at any age. They literally look at them differently. And as James said earlier, when he walks in, they ask him what's his rating, and not, other questions, about their gender.
James, you raised the hand.
Yes, thank you. It's absolutely important that money is part of the issue, because I come from a capitalist country, and if you're not associated, if money is not of a certain level, you are not valued. So your value gets attached, rightly or wrongly, to the amount of money that's associated with the event that's being held. And so the more money, the better. There's no question about it. It's the easiest way to get media coverage. It's the easy way to get sponsorship. So if you can generate the money, then a lot follows from that. So, but that's a really crass realization, but it is reality. We have to live with it. And the other aspect that you were talking a little bit about the idea of the federation's involvement in it. And I would stress that, when you walk into it, the chess in the United States is organized by delegates, an executive board, and then an operating staff. And FIDE is has a general assembly and an executive board and an operating staff. And when you walk in, the delegates are mostly white males. And when you look at the board right now, it just changes. It's exclusively male. And these are the people that are making policy decisions. And so, and sometimes when you're a strong-willed woman with a mind of your own, you engender antipathy, and people don't like you when you get to that level. And so people can escort you out, either through an election or through just outvoting you on issues, whatever the strategy is. So what we also want to do, if we want to change policy at a federation level, you've got to get more women involved, get more women involved in the delegates, getting more women involved in the General Assembly, getting more women involved in that. So policy matters, when they do arise, have a woman's point of view as well as a male point of view. And this is also changing, but it's changing at a slower pace than society is changing. So changing the male point of view is coming along much faster than it is in the Federation, United States Chess Federation, and the FIDE is lagging a little bit behind. The chess world is lagging behind societal changes, and we need to kickstart that. More delegates.
James, I can tell you that I'm already very happy that Dana is a big part of the FIDE's commission right now, because before we didn't have any woman in this high position. So it changes, actually.
Speaking of changes, we have all seen that conditions for women have improved a lot considerably in the past years. It has become easier for women to make a living from chess. May I ask you, is that possible that some men could have felt discriminated? That, let's say, women with lower rating in titles or same rating make better living conditions, prizes than them? Do you think such an issue exists? Feel free to speak up.
Again, part of my foundation work is that there are people that that live in countries that are not thought of as equal to the rest of the countries, and they do feel discriminated against. And it may be something as simple as skin color. And these types of discriminations exist in the real world, not just in the chess world. But it is something that, if people paid more attention to, how do we help them? There's The Queen of Clotway was a movie based on how a girl who had nothing was able to go to an Olympiad, and how marvelous that experience was. And these are the types of things that we also should bear in mind, because yes, there's systematic discrimination against women, but there's also systematic discrimination against anyone that looks other than the people that have been dominating the decision-making in chess for so long.
Thinking of your question, Dina, I think that some men might consider it discriminating that women get higher prizes regardless of them having less ratings or lower ratings. But I think it's still not objective, because, as I said, it has improved over the last years, but the prize gap is still huge. And it's quite many years ago, but I think that it has not much changed since then. When I took the decision whether or not to follow the professional chess player's path, The financial part was one of the arguments. I've just finished the high school. I had to enter the university. I had excellent results, twice becoming the world youth champion under the 18. So there were all the preconditions to become a professional chess player. But then, already then, I understood that it's a no-go for me because I just could not afford to pay my coach. If I wanted to excel, if I wanted to really be at the level that I could earn enough to self-sustain, I had to have some resources, which I did not. And then adding all the benefits and drawbacks, my choice was to keep chess as my nice hobby, as a very vital part of my life, but still choose the profession where I could earn some money, especially coming from the country where you do not have huge accumulated capitals in your families, and there is a tension and this understanding that you have to find your job, you have to earn for yourself. Yes, and I'm not coming from the poorest country. Imagine that we are among the 2% of the richest ones. Yes, so. Still, I mean, this is a very important factor. If we want to keep it as a profession, of course, the prize funds, the money matters.
I mentioned earlier that women have a lot of handicap, even in the coaching aspect, for example, that there are very few female coaches, and therefore oftentimes the expense of traveling with a male coach is doubling compared to men. So I think the women have a lot more handicaps. So the fact that in some few tournaments, men feel jealous that women are winning more prizes is just a little bit of compensation for all the disadvantages that women face. I can tell you, for example, that when I was a competitive player and I wanted to prove myself to be among the best in the world, not just best female players, I was severely punished multiple times for it. To start with, when I was about 12 years old, the Hungarian Chess Federation has withheld my passport for several years that I couldn't travel to the West to play in tournaments, just because I refused to play in female-only tournaments exclusively. They wanted me to play only against women, and I wanted to play against the best competition I could get. Then it came with the issues with FIDE when I qualified for the interzonal tournament from the Hungarian championship for the zonal. And I wasn't allowed to play because I was a woman. And then finally, again, with the reasoning that it's because I play only against men, they gave all women 100 rating point gift except me. I mean, it sounds unbelievable, right? But it's true. 1986. All women got 100 bonus points except me.
Susan, following example of Judith, do you think your results can be emulated more frequently with or without separate events? As far as I follow your take on this matter, it is in general good for females to keep this path, but yet to achieve such great results as your family has achieved, your choice was to avoid these events. So what's the recipe?
Well, that's what I'm saying, that from the organizational perspective, we need to broaden the base, so we need both. However, for the few that show extreme talent early on and motivation and having the family background support and all that, those definitely need to almost exclusively play in the open competition in order to have a chance to challenge Magnus, right? Or whoever the world champion may be eventually. So I think they both coexist. So on one hand, we need to broaden the base to have a better chance to have a super talent of Magnus level, or but the ones that we identified, of course, they need to mostly play against the mixed competition, the best competition they can.
So shouldn't we, let's say, coaches follow, in general, this this kind of a must rule for girls to play only with boys on a brighter level, but only when girls have let's say a talent, motivation, and opportunity for that. Let's say demolishing the barriers would create more problems for girls than, as they say, take the child and put it into the into the ocean, and it will start swimming. It will learn how to swim.
Yes, the problem is that there are sharks around, so you have to be very careful which ocean you throw the child in.
That's a very beautiful way of putting it. Elisabeth, getting back to our previous topic of discrimination, potential discrimination, I was wondering, you as an active player nowadays, you have been interacting with so many players, you're a very social player. Have you heard any of those stories or feelings from your male colleagues?
Well, I mean, like, to be very frank, I don't think we can deny the fact that we have sexism in chess. Like, even though it's a topic which is not like appreciate to listen to, but we do have issues in the gender discussion. And nobody can tell me that we don't have sexism in chess. We have. And like many tournaments, like in some way, you have these stories, you have this interference, but in general, like it's not a matter we can neglect in a way. But this is not the main issue. I mean, I believe that in order, if we want to improve the life of women chess players, we should do, as Susan suggested, we should broaden the base. So we should have an opportunity to have female events to secure the income for those women's professionals who want to take a living on chess. But we should also have opportunities for the super talents, for example, like, okay, Hu Yifan is maybe not active anymore, but let's say Gayashkina or someone, to have a chance to compete with the top of the top. And we should give the chance to women's coaches, because there is sometimes a difference. I mean, we have a lot of, for example, like talented little girls from India. I mean, this is a country where I would say that we have really a lot of young talented girls. And maybe for them, it's easier to work with women over working with men. So it would be good to have like an improvement in the women's coach department, to have an improvement that we have enough female tournaments to secure a living for everybody who wants to become a female chess player or professional chess player, and to have also opportunities to support those who are super talented, like just to say a name now, like someone like Ayashkina. And we shouldn't neglect the fact that even in mixed tournaments, there are always some kind of strange stories. So, I mean, we shouldn't neglect the fact that the sexism doesn't exist in our field.
I have to say something on this matter. As a spoiler alert, we will be having another discussion, especially on sexism in chess. So I would prefer to avoid this topic right now, because we expect to have a separate stream for this one. And I have prepared one more question for you, my dear guests. In the women's team chess, the general atmosphere sometimes have an impact, higher impact than compared in men's team. Do you think something like this exists, or you would object it? And if, let's say, yes, then what are the reasons for that?
You mean a higher impact on what?
The atmosphere, the general atmosphere.
Well, I tell you something, like women among each other are much more cruel to each other than men among each other. When men are angry with each other, they will ignore, like for, let's say, a couple of hours, and they will drink a beer together and everything will be fine. Women, they will hate each other for a couple of days, months, years. I mean, they are like, from the character point of view, they cannot forget for months. So, I mean, like we have to really distinguish between women's characters and men's characters, because I know in my team, there had been conflicts. In the men's team, there had been conflicts. But the funny part is in the men's team, the conflicts never took long. But in the women's team, the conflict could take years or months. So I don't know what experience like Dana and Susan have on this regard, but I have the impression that if women are angry with each other, it can take a lot longer than if men are angry with each other. But this is my personal experience on that.
I think I've been
very fortunate as of team competitions because I was on the team with my sisters. So we never had any issues in our team in Olympiads.
I've also been privileged to be a member of the team who has not changed much since 1998. I'm sorry for my for our chess level in the country, but I think it's more about the leadership of the team and of the federation. I mean, if you've got an experienced captain and trainers who know how to deal also with their players psychologically, then the problems are much more seldom. Of course, the competitions and high-level competitions, they're always very tense, and players are much more nervous. So as a leader, you have to also be able to handle this and take into consideration, somehow balance the interests and positions of the players. But that's part of the team management, I guess. Yes. And I wouldn't say that the emotions are less heated in the men's team and teams compared
It's just judged from our captains, and the women's captains were always much more dead at the end of the event than the men's captains were. So that's my conclusion.
The initial question.
I have been.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that I also have, of course, a lot of experience as a coach running SPICE at Texas Tech University and then for Webster University. And we had a lot of teams, and it takes a lot of, patience and challenge to overcome managing the team atmosphere. But I think, and then we had some women teams and the men's as well. But I think it's hard to generalize. I think Elisabeth may be too limited to the German team versus.
It is.
I would not generalize. I think that I know a lot of guys that keep their anger for a long time and may not speak to each other for a long time for one reason or another. And so I wouldn't generalize that women would keep their anger longer, or men overcome it so easily over a beer.
So you wouldn't agree that there is that the general atmosphere is, let's say, having a greater impact on the performance of the players in the women team, or once again,
it definitely has a better atmosphere, has a positive impact for sure. And in fact, my experience is observing not just the Hungarian team or the US team, let's say, but other teams, that in general, I think women get along better in most countries, teams, let's say, or national or within countries. I remember Hungarian team championship and that kind of thing. Guys are a lot more competitive, and even if they supposedly represent their own countries, they focus more on their individual successes.
But this is the point, actually, Susan. They are more competitive and they focus more on the individual successes. So if they are playing in the team, they focus so much on themselves that they don't want to get distracted with the conflicts with the others. And that means they are eventually more successful. At least this is what I witnessed when looking at the German national team for the last 20 years.
Yeah, this is something
but I think.
I do want to, because it's very dangerous to generalize, because I have seen anger issues, managing mismanagement from men and women, and I've seen people with good coping skills, both men and women. So, it really depends on the individual so much, but I think you can have the experience that Elisabeth is talking about and then think that that's true for everybody. And it's a danger to do that. However, I don't want to discredit your experience. That's what your experience was. And I do think that I know a lot of guys who just don't go out and have a beer and get over it, but seethe for decades over something, some imagined slight. So, this is being human. This is not so much being a male or a female. But the best tournaments I've ever played in were team tournaments. And the amateur team East is run by Steve Doyle from New Jersey. He's done it for years and years and years, and everybody has a blast, male, female, doesn't matter who you are. You're there to compete for your team. And, when you lose, you feel like you're letting the team down. And when you win, you feel like you're helping your team. And if you have that attitude, team competitions are wonderful. And if you're only in it for yourself, then you're not really a team player. Male or female doesn't matter. It's whether or not you're a team player. And you usually, especially in the high level competitions, there's a coach or a captain that is not a player. And that can be very important in managing and massaging the egos that both men and women have. So I think that it's important to generalize in some ways in order to get a picture of, yes, women have less money dedicated to them and they have less numbers. I think those kinds of generalizations are accurate, but we should shy away from generalizing about personalities are this or that, because experiences, your mileage may vary.
There's one more aspect, Dina, on the point of view of separate events, common events. I just thought and came to my mind. I think security and sense of security is very important for women, because as we decided already, or the majority of us considered that separate events for women only are crucial, but the majority of them are still mixed. I think what is interesting that only lately we see that women dare to be vocal about the cases of harassment against them.
Yes.
This has never been the case. I think it's actually a good sign that they are brave enough to point to their attention and the attention of the society to the problems that occur. But what is also important that they should also really know their rights, that in the case of harassment, there would be somebody who would take care of them, and that they have the regulations, they have the law on their side, yes. And also with the help of FIDE, there is the Ethics and Disciplinary Commission that they can report. The case will be investigated, keeping their person secret, keeping their privacy of their private life strong. So I think this is also some task of ours to inform the ladies what are the tools they can protect themselves, what are the rights they have on their side, so that they feel secure and much more than probably brave to participate and stay in the chess world.
And there are also trust issues there, because if you report something and nothing happens, you don't trust that system. And that has happened too many times to count. So you've got to show that you're taken seriously and that there may, in fact, be actions taken to protect you. And once you build that trust, then people are more likely to report these incidents. But in the absence of that trust, it's incredibly brave to report it, because you don't think anybody will take you seriously.
This is kind of curious for me that all of us seem to agree on the same idea that for now the system that we have of separating events, titles, prizes is for good, and we would love to put the barriers off once we're ready, not now, but. And once again, all other female players I had the chance to talk to or have been following the interviews of which express the same idea, more or less. So it seems to be like all of us are aligned on this, but yet this topic exists. Would you be in the position to tell us where does this idea come from, and why yet the topic arises, even though it seems to us, let's say, the recipe seems for us more or less evident?
I think it's because people don't understand, and let's say in the mainstream, the non-chess players or the people who are not involved in the organization or the tournaments, or the men who don't experience this on their end, on the receiving end, they don't see the problem. They don't see the sexism. They don't see the challenges of extra expenses for girls and women. They don't face it. So, for example, when I'm speaking to a lot of non-chess players, and they are surprised to hear that this is a mental activity. Why is it separate? Because they cannot imagine the level of sexism, of sexual harassment, of mistreatment that women have to face in the chess community. They just cannot imagine it. Because as Dana said, that people were afraid to speak up until recently. And it's a big step forward that finally some women spoke up. Like I had numerous incidents, and as James said, I didn't feel comfortable or safe to speak up because I just know that nothing will happen. Like even now, even while I was on the chairperson of the Women's Commission, toward the end of my tenure of 10 years, there was a reported incident, and I don't know if it's valid or not. But all I know is it was basically swiped under the carpet. Nothing happened, as far as I know. And all I see is that some of those very people who were in positions, they were the perpetrators themselves. They were the ones themselves putting women in those positions.
This is another huge topic, and that's why more women need to get involved at the delegates level, at the General Assembly level, and become more involved in your governance wherever you are, whatever country you live in, whatever language you speak, get involved in the governance, because this is where policy is set and policy is changed.
I mean, given the Me Too movement that has been big in the last, 4 or 5 years or so now, I wish there would be at least one case in chess, at least one case, where somebody would speak up and some man who has been proven to do those things pay for it. I have not done one case yet.
No, it's not existing.
Not a single one.
No,
there
I mean,
would be a precedent that XYZ chess player, grandmaster, organizer, whoever it is, would have to actually face consequences. Maybe things would start changing.
I mean, Susan, I totally agree with you, because I also have witnessed last year some special immunity for the top men's section. So whatever, like crime, right? Or misbehavior they did, they never have to pay for it. But usually those have to pay who are not in the top 10 because they don't enjoy this immunity. And of course, like FIDE doesn't want to get involved to huge scandals, because huge scandals are connected to the super players. And I mean, I have been a victim myself to some of these cases without getting in any details about this. But I can tell you that I witnessed myself that actually that top 10 players in FIDE have a different immunity than players outside the top 10. And I don't speak about women, I speak about top 10 men section, right?
Yeah, but I don't know of any grandmaster or even international master who would have been, faced any consequence, not even just top 10.
No, well, for example, like Rouses was caught by cheating and he faced consequences. He was not top 10.
Sexist. But that's nothing to do with sexism. That's
no, it's not. Yes, this is.
Elisabeth, I think that what is important that it is to report, because sometimes the cases happen and then ladies are not really reporting. So there are instruments in the place. There's, as I said, in FIDE Ethics and Disciplinary Commission that will investigate and I'm pretty sure will take fair decisions regardless of the elo, of the status, of the titles, of the achievements of the player who makes the harassment.
Well, it's not about, I don't speak about harassment here, about sexual harassment. Absolutely not harassment. I speak about general mistakes which are, according to FIDE ethics, not okay. It's not about sexual harassment. I mean about the general
whatever breach of the ethical code, and we've got a brand new code that is much more better, much more explicit, much more modern and protective to the chess world and chess players. We just have to address these cases.
Well,
both the United States Chess Federation and FIDE have made tremendous strides and progress in these areas, but still there's a systemic problem that women are taught not to report. And that's a very difficult thing to get over because they're taught not to report because they don't see the prosecutions. They don't see people getting punished for their transgressions, whatever they are, whatever ethical bounds they've crossed. So you've got to build the system, the trust into the system, which is a hard thing. But you started, you've built this system in place, but people don't trust it yet. And they shouldn't trust it yet until it's proven to be successful. And when you do that, then people will trust it more. It's a long, hard slog. You've made great progress, but
I mean, look how long it took in Hollywood for women to speak up, right? Until some of the biggest people in Hollywood, everybody knew, just like in the chess community, everybody knew what was going on for the actresses and people who wanted to get roles. And it took like what, 100 years, 50 years, whatever, until finally our society, let's say in that field, was brave enough to speak up. And I think we need to get to that stage in the chess community as well.
Summing up our conversation, how many years would you give to chess community to reach the level where we could remove the barriers, the separation?
I would hope it's still in my lifetime, maybe in the next 20, 25 years.
I think we've made a great deal of progress from the generation that I walked into in the chess world to the current generation. I think it's going to take another generation before we see anything approaching gender equality.
I would also love to keep some barriers still for a while for the sake of protecting the girls and women. 25 years is a minimum, but even more, I guess.
Elisabeth, what's your...
Well, I think in general things improved a lot if I compare it with 20 or 30 years ago. And for example, like in Susan's time when she was like on the top level, she had to suffer probably much more than like the problems we are facing now, because like we are modernizing in this regard. But still today, from incidences I experienced myself, I cannot yet speak of equality, especially, and I don't speak about harassment, especially like when it comes to certain aspects where like when it hits someone super strong, it's not like publicly discussed, it's hidden in a kind of chapter. But when it like infects someone who is not as important as a chess player, it's openly discussed. And this kind of incidents I have witnessed in the last 2 years. And I would wish that there is no separation between top 10, top 5, top 20, top 30, top 40, man or female, that whenever like something is not going accordingly, that everything is equally discussed.
I think we're reaching the end of our conversation. Was there something that you would like to add to all the topics that we have discussed in the latest hour?
I'd like to just let our viewers know that my foundation's Girls Invitational, that is now online because of COVID, will take place this year again on June 18th on the chess.com platform. So if any girls would like to fight for the scholarships to Webster University, this is their opportunity. There is no entry fee, so anybody can compete.
So it's June 18th? June 18th on chess.com online, save the day for all the girls. Where can we find more information on the website of your foundation?
I think it has been already posted on my social media, but I'll make sure it will also be on my foundation's website soon. Yes.
Save the day, James. You wanted to add?
Yes, and I'm so happy that you invited me and that I was given a chance to participate. But I wanted to tell you about something that I'm facing right now. Last year, I made a proposal to have a separate U.S. senior women's event. We have an open event, and none of the women can qualify for it. They don't have the ratings. So I wanted to separate, just as we do with the U.S. Championship, rating for women that are they're considered seniors. And I offered to sponsor the prize fund, and it still wasn't adopted because the argument was that if they adopted it, they would have to do it every year. And I wasn't willing to sponsor it every year. So but now it's the year of the women, so we're revisiting it. And I think I'm going to get matching funds, and I think we're going to do it. And if we can pull it off once, they may consider making this event permanent, which I hope they do, because these women that are now called seniors were the ones that were experiencing that systematic discrimination, yet got strong as chess players anyways. And so this tournament should be making restitution to them for what they went through. And so I'm strongly believing it, but I'm going to go and put this in front of a group of delegates that are mostly male, and to a board that is mostly exclusively male. So this is why I keep harping on get involved in the governance too, because this is a question of policy, and I can't change it myself. I need a lot of help. Thanks.
That's very beautifully said. Dear guests, let me thank you once again for taking your time to participate in our discussion. Once again, I want to remind our viewers, introduce once again our speakers who we had today. Grandmaster Susan Polgar, former world champion, one Grandmaster Dina Reizniece-Ozola, managing director of FIDE, international master Elisabeth Paehtz, strongest German female chess player, FIDE master James Eade, CEO of Eade Foundation. Once again, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts regarding this, and I do believe that continue these conversations, we can help change the world. And I can only add, as Elisabeth said, it is very important that we now have more and more female in the direction of FIDE. And I do believe that this will help a lot changing the situation as well.
Dina, thank you very much for inviting us. And I also would like to point your attention that this is the year of the women in chess. FIDE also proposes a lot of debate and discussions, podcasts, seminars, free seminars for ladies. So please follow the information, enroll, and take the chance of these opportunities. And at the end, I would also like to address all the women leaders like you are yourselves, dear ladies. It is our task to help the others, to help the ladies, to help the girls and empower them. That's why we have given the time, we are given the time and mandate, not only to benefit ourselves, but also to help the other girls. And together, then we will reach the goals others only think of. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you for having me as well. It was a pleasure to discuss this important topic with all of you.
Thank you, everyone. And it is time to say goodbye to our viewers. And do follow ACP Chess Twitch channel for more shows. Once again, we'll be having sexism in chess discussion soon as the following topic, and many, many more to come. Thank you so much, and see you soon.
Bye-bye.